What if America's push for clean energy through ethanol fuel is actually making our food toxic? There's a byproduct from ethanol production that's flooding our food system, and it's literally changing the composition of every piece of meat, dairy, and eggs that you consume. This is not about climate change or politics. This is about how an entire industry's waste product is ending up in your body and changing it, not in a good way. Today, we're exposing one of the most overlooked health crises in America, how the ethanol as fuel industry is systematically poisoning our food supply through livestock feed. You see, when we talk about you are what you eat, there's a deeper layer. You are what your food eats, and what's being fed to our livestock today is a concentrated toxin that didn't even exist 20 to 50 years ago. Now, most people know about seed oils in restaurants and packaged foods. These are high in polyunsaturated fats, PUFAs, specifically linoleic acid and omega-6. In the early 1900s, PUFAs made up only 1 to 2% of our daily calories. Today, estimates range from 15 to 25% or higher. These PUFAs disrupt energy production, slow metabolism, change our internal body fat composition, and increase cellular damage. I go into the PUFA problem in depth in another video titled How PUFAs Are Changing Us at the Cellular Level, so check that out if you want the full breakdown of the PUFA crisis facing our nation. But there's a massive source of PUFAs that nobody is talking about, and it comes directly from America's ethanol as fuel industry. In the early 2000s, the government started pushing ethanol as a clean alternative fuel. But when you make ethanol from corn, you don't just get fuel. You get a massive amount of waste product called DDGS, dried distillers grains with solubles. So here's how it works. Corn is grown using industrial agriculture practices, meaning monocrop fields, GMO seeds, synthetic fertilizers, toxic pesticides. The corn kernels themselves contain starch, fat, protein, fiber, and minerals. And to make the ethanol, only the starch component is needed. So then the harvested corn kernels are ground into meal. Water and enzymes are added to break down the starch into sugars, which is then mixed with yeast to ferment into ethanol. The ethanol is distilled off, leaving behind the fat, fiber, protein, and minerals. This leftover mash is pressed and dried to create this DDGS byproduct. For every gallon of ethanol produced, you get 6 to 6.5 pounds of DDGS. In 2011 alone, the U.S. ethanol industry produced 35.7 million metric tons of this stuff. That's 78.7 billion pounds. So what do you do with 78.7 billion pounds of concentrated corn waste? You sell it as cheap livestock feed. Non-genetically modified heritage corn isn't a problem. It's been consumed for thousands of years in some cultures. But DDGS isn't just corn, it's concentrated GMO corn. Since you remove the starch but leave everything else, you end up with a product that has 3 times more fat and PUFAs than the raw corn kernels. Let me break down what's actually in DDGS. Here's the fat composition: 70 to 75% unsaturated fat, 50 to 55% linoleic acid, the dominant fat in seed oils, and only 2 to 4% stearic acid, the metabolism supporting fat we actually need. But it gets worse. Most corn used for ethanol is GMO corn heavily treated with glyphosate, atrazine, and other toxic chemicals. During ethanol production, these pesticides become concentrated in the DDGS byproduct. Studies show that pesticide levels in DDGS can be significantly higher than in the original corn kernel. And then there are mycotoxins, toxic compounds from mold. If the original corn is contaminated, these toxins don't get destroyed during processing. Instead, they concentrate by a factor of 3 times or more in the final DDGS. When this contaminated DDGS gets stored and transported, often in open air conditions, it can develop even more mold and mycotoxins. So DDGS can be a concentrated source of PUFAs, pesticides, and mycotoxins. Who's using this concentrated waste product? Pretty much every major livestock operation in America, and even many commonly used feed brands available at your local farm store. DDGS costs less than 10 cents per pound, making it incredibly attractive to companies looking to cut feed costs. It's being fed to hogs, chickens, both meat and egg layers, beef cattle in feedlots, and even dairy cows. Tyson Foods, America's largest chicken producer, started using DDGS in April 2004. By 2010, they were using 700,000 metric tons annually, Imagine what that number looks like today. While it is standard practice in the livestock industry that exact feed formulations are trade secrets and proprietary, DDGS is now widely used across conventional livestock operations and standard off-the-shelf feed bags because it's cheap and provides some protein and fiber. But that protein and fiber comes with a massive dose of PUFAs and toxins. Here's where this gets really concerning. Pigs and chickens are monogastric animals, like us. They're literally a reflection of what they eat. Neither animals nor humans can produce PUFAs, so the fat composition in their bodies directly mirrors their diet. This means when you eat conventional chicken, pork, or eggs, you're getting a concentrated dose of everything that animal consumed, including DDGS with its high PUFA, pesticide, and toxin load as well. In fact, conventional pork, chicken, and eggs can now contain the same amount of PUFAs as canola oil. Let's take a quick look at the fatty acid profiles of Nourish Food Club's chicken and pork, where we custom formulate feed to not just be corn and soy free, but also low in PUFAs, compared to research data on meat from hogs and chickens fed DDGS. For hogs fed DDGS, linoleic acid can exceed 25% of total fatty acids, while stearic acid, a beneficial saturated fat, drops significantly, the opposite of the pattern we want if we desire robust metabolic health. In contrast, Nourish pork maintains low linoleic acid levels and the stearic acid level more than doubles, supporting metabolism and energy production. DDGS-fed chicken typically contains 24% linoleic acid, with some studies reporting up to 32.4%. Our Nourish chicken, however, contains just 10% linoleic acid, paired with a significant increase in stearic acid. That's a 58 to 69% reduction in metabolism disrupting linoleic acid, alongside a 200% increase in metabolism supporting stearic acid when you choose properly raised chicken. Historically, the ratio of stearic acid to linoleic acid was greater than 1, promoting robust energy production. Modern diets have flipped that ratio, coinciding with declining metabolic health. You might think ruminants like cattle can convert PUFAs to saturated fats through a process called biohydrogenation, and they can, to a point. But when you feed unnaturally high amounts of PUFAs from, for example, DDGS, the rumen can't always keep up. For dairy, feeding DDGS increases total PUFA content in milk by up to 39%, while decreasing health-promoting saturated fats. And studies show that beef from DDGS-fed cattle can contain 67% higher PUFA levels. This is unfortunately seen as a good thing in mainstream livestock nutrition, since the myth that saturated fats are bad and PUFAs are heart-healthy is still going strong. But they even recognize that there are downsides to the higher PUFA content, since these fatty acids are unstable.
But an issue that's come up since then that we saw and others have seen is you feed higher levels of distillers in the diet, it changes the fatty acid profile of the beef. You have a higher level of unsaturated fatty acids, which means they're more susceptible to oxidation, hence meat becomes rancid, shortens shelf life at the retail level in the grocery store.
Cooking PUFA-rich foods accelerates the formation of toxic compounds like MDA, HNE, and other aldehydes because high heat initiates oxidation of these unstable fats. Studies clearly document that the higher the PUFA content in raw meat, the more oxidation products form during cooking. Similarly, eggs with higher PUFA levels have been shown to oxidize more easily, reducing their shelf life and compromising their nutritional value, flavor, and aroma. This means that when you eat PUFA-rich foods, you're not only consuming fats that interfere with proper energy production, but you're also ingesting preformed toxic lipid peroxides, already oxidized and ready to wreak havoc once in your body. Even just 15% of your calories from PUFAs, which is considered low for the standard American diet, has been shown to significantly increase oxidative stress markers in healthy men. On the flip side, lowering linoleic acid intake has been shown to reduce these harmful byproducts. One study found that chronic headache patients who reduced their linoleic acid intake from 6.7% to 2.4% of daily calories, not only saw a significant reduction in linoleic acid byproducts, but also experienced substantial improvements in headache severity and quality of life. This is why minimizing PUFA intake and choosing fats that are richer in stable, saturated fats like stearic acid can make a meaningful difference, supporting better metabolic health and less oxidation. DDGS in livestock feed is the perfect example of unintended consequences. The government and others pushed ethanol as the answer to clean energy, creating massive subsidies for corn and ethanol production. But nobody asked, what happens to all the waste? The answer? It gets concentrated into a PUFA bomb and fed to livestock, fundamentally altering the nutritional composition of our food supply. DDGS represents everything wrong with industrial agriculture, using cheap byproducts to cut costs while degrading food quality and maximizing food quantity. And it's all subsidized by your tax dollars through corn subsidies and even some ethanol mandates. The question we need to ask is, what price are we really paying for cheap food and clean energy? This is why we do things differently at Nourish. You'll never consume 0 PUFAs in your diet. That's impossible since all foods contain some. But we're on a mission to produce food with more natural PUFA levels, closer to levels your great-great-grandma consumed, back when metabolic problems were basically non-existent. We don't use commercial or off-the-shelf feeds since soy or DDGS is commonly snuck in. We custom make our own for our layer birds for low PUFA eggs, meat birds for low PUFA chicken, and hogs for low PUFA pork. Our feed ingredients aren't government subsidized. We don't use industrial byproducts. Our costs are higher because we prioritize quality over quantity and profit margins. So let's take a look at Nourished chicken compared to organic free-range chicken. Our chicken contains 44% more saturated fats, 202% more stearic acid, 42% less total PUFAs, and 54% less linoleic acid, the metabolism damaging and unstable fat high in seed oils. The conventional food system made a choice, prioritize cheap, abundant food over nutritional quality. But you have a choice too. Every time you choose properly raised animal products, you're voting against this system. You're saying no to industrial byproducts masquerading as food. The ethanol industry isn't going anywhere. There's too much money and too many subsidies involved. But you can protect yourself and your family by understanding where your food comes from, what your food is eating, and making better choices. If you want to experience what real, properly raised animal products taste like, products that actually nourish your body instead of loading it with industrial waste, check out Nourish Food Club. Corn ethanol is often marketed as a clean energy source, but as we reviewed, the reality is more complicated and honestly a little hypocritical. Growing corn for ethanol requires massive amounts of fertilizers and pesticides, most of which are made using the very fossil fuels ethanol is supposed to replace. Industrial corn production also relies on monocropping, which degrades soil, increases erosion, pollutes waterways with nitrogen and phosphorus runoff, introduces more pesticides in the environment we all live in, disrupts natural carbon and water cycles, interferes with natural weather patterns, and reduces biodiversity. While burning ethanol may emit less CO2 than gasoline, producing the corn itself is highly energy intensive once you account for the fossil fuel inputs in fertilizers, machinery, irrigation, and transport. So in summary, corn ethanol carries significant ecological costs despite its clean energy label. I'm not claiming I can provide all the answers to our damaged food system, but I can expose the problems because awareness is the first step. If more people know, then consumer action and system level change can follow. So if you can, please share this video. Most people have no idea that ethanol production waste is in their food. Knowledge is the first step toward making better choices. What questions do you have about DDGS or how the ethanol industry is impacting our food? Drop them in the comments below. And thanks so much for watching.